Let's do it. Why, Darcius, is it a sad here we go again?
He's not ready.
He's ready.
All right, we're going to roll right into it. Micah, do you have the questions open? There's an Excel spreadsheet with the questions we've got.
Get to him real quick. There it is.
Matthias Rahim requested to speak. I don't think you have to do that, but that's okay.
Yeah, that was me. I'm driving. I was trying to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, Madiash, sorry. All right, first question. How will people changing classes work? Pretty simple. If you want to be a new class, then go for it. You don't have to tell us. You can just change your what class you have selected for your Discord roles. If you want to see the new classes channels, I mean, you really don't even need to do that if you don't want to. Realistically, like no one's going to police you on it. You just have to make sure that all of the kit that you have is appropriate for your new class. Like if you are going from, say, warrior to arcanist, you can't wear metal anymore. Sorry. So that is what you're going to have to look at changing. As far as letting us know that you've changed classes, as with last year, when you go to buy your ticket, it's going to have a series of questions. It's going to ask you, what culture are you in? What class are you playing? Are you camping on or off site? Like all that stuff that we kind of need to know so that we can have the correct amount of resources allocated. We can plan our camping zones appropriately. But yeah, you don't need to tell anyone. It's just whenever you're submitting stuff, it's probably best if you include which class you are playing because you might submit something and we would say, oh, you actually can't use that if you're playing a sage or whatever. But yeah, just go for it if you want to change. If you like the new Arcanist rules, then go nuts. Someone asked if they could incorporate a specific crossbow into their kit. So I will say this crossbow was allowed. I'm not going to post it, I guess. But if you want us to do kit approvals, you can send it to the email. That's probably going to be better than doing it in the Q&As. And yeah, crossbows are allowed, and as long as they are less than the required inch pound, then you should be good to go. When can we... Go ahead.
I was going to say thanks, Theseus, for putting that contact at Reckoning LARP email in there.
Yep. Send us emails. Lots and lots of emails. We've gotten far fewer than I expected, and I would say, you guys should be going nuts.
When can we expect to see the rest of the rules, artisan rules, looting, resources, mortal wounds? In the next month. We have made a lot of headway on all of those, and we're obviously going to have at least the initial drafts out before we sell any tickets, but those are coming within the next 30 days. So those will be the chunk of the rules anyway. There might be like another mini game rule set that's not out by then, but that's not as prominent of a feature.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, at a minimum, you can expect to see within the next month the artisan rules, the looting rules. I don't actually know if we're going to go over very much more about mortal wounds. So we're going to go over how to track them in the game, and we're going to go over how many you can receive before you have to go to Oblivion. But in general, the rules for that are going to be vague because Oblivion specifically, we want it to be mysterious, and so you're not really going to know what that is until you get there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This is a big one.
Yeah, we got a couple big ones in here.
Yep. With the move away from factions to cultures, players have gotten conflicting answers and ideas pertaining to the focus of the game, specifically PvP versus PvE. Could we get a straight answer on how the game is going to handle PvE moving into the PvP moving into the future? How much the game will be focused on PvP, and whether the culture versus culture gameplay will still be a thing? So, first of all, factions versus cultures is more of a naming thing than like a rules philosophy thing. And as far as PvP versus PvE, apologies if we've been giving conflicting answers. I don't think we have, but if anything, it's just an issue of communication. So as Reckoning has always been a player driven LARP, that's going to largely be up to the players. In the first year at least, the players really went for a more low conflict versus in between the cultures sort of approach, and that was their decision. Now, we will have content for both PvP and PvE. I think specifically when you say PvP, you just mean non culture level stuff, and PvE being culture level kind of decisions. We are going to provide content for both of those things. So I think the point we're trying to get across is that there will be an opportunity and there will be a need to invest in both a culture level and a specific player level amount of energy, but you get to decide how you want to go about it. And if you decide your culture decides it's more important to put all of every player's energy into the culture and no one focuses on their own storyline, you can do that. If a culture decides, you know what, the culture level stuff isn't really as important for us, we can do this, there will be consequences to either decision. It should not be an easy game if we've done our jobs. Say, uh, oh, well, it's obvious that it should be more of a culture driven thing, and it's obvious it should be more of a player driven thing. There should be plenty of opportunity to do both kinds of things, and there should be plenty of um, consequences to both kinds of play. So I don't think it's that they're conflicting. I think it's that it's not cut and dry on purpose because we're going to see what you guys do.
So I got
And
I
there's
got the impression that this question was more like PvP as in like culture versus culture conflict, or PvE like culture versus orcs and undead.
there will be
And
plenty of that as well.
yeah, so due to numbers, just like straight facts, the player to orc and undead ratio, like we're expecting it to be like 8 to 1. So the orcs are going to be tough, as we saw last year. They were hard to kill. And the undead are going to be tough too, with lots of new abilities that you guys are going to get here, probably again within the next month. But yes, like competing against one another as cultures is going to continue to be the core part of the game, realistically. How you guys want to do that, whether it is actually fighting each other or whatever else, that's up to the players.
Yeah, that's a much more succinct answer. Sorry, I misunderstood that. Um, Secondly, with PvP still being prevalent in the LARP, is there still going to be a win condition for the event? If so, how will this affect a culture's post game, both on the winning end and the losing end? Those questions will be answered when we release the rules in the next 30 days or so. There is a cut and dry win condition, and there are cut and dry effects that will affect the culture, not only uh, this year, but following years. So those things both exist. They are both very cut and dry. How you go about accomplishing them is obviously up to you, but there will be consequences to not performing well enough to complete this win condition that we're going to reveal. Lastly, how will the PvE play into the PvP side of the LARP? Will they be provided with their own objectives or be used as a force to level the playing field of the game? This will be a find out in game sort of thing. At a certain point, we're not going to tell you everything you need to prepare for because then the game's no fun. You do all your strategizing ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's not a question we're going to answer ahead of the game. I mean, Liam, correct me if I'm wrong, or Mariash, Joel, sorry, I just see your actual name there. If you want to provide a little bit of context that you think is okay, but I personally think that's just a question of how is the game going to go, and that's a find out in game thing.
Yeah, I will just echo that. I don't want to share anything. If I could erase everyone's memories and completely wipe the orcs from their minds, I would. So
Yeah, we're not going to tell you guys what you win for winning the game, but there are going to be things.
All right, so it was one big three-part question. Liam, you want to answer the next one?
Sure. What are what are the plans to balance factions between each other in Reckoning 2? The Rivlins were the most played faction and Suzak the least. Will it be a neutral camp if the faction appears least populated? And this is kind of a two-parter. So for the first part, we're not really going to balance, I guess. In terms of how we run the game, yes, if there is one culture or camp that is like they've got the least players, they're having the least success in whatever it is that they are engaged with in the game, then we as staff have the ability and the we are empowered, especially through your culture leads, to do whatever it takes to make the game more fun for you guys. So we're not going to explicitly give anyone like boons or anything to necessarily balance the playing field. But maybe if one culture has far and away collected the most malice, maybe the Suzak Mar have got 3 times as much malice as the next culture. Well, spoiler alert, the orcs and the undead, they probably want malice too, and they don't like when you guys have it, so they're gonna focus on the Suzak, and things might not go as well for them as they would hope. But yes, there's not really anything extra to the game that is going to be given to you guys necessarily.
Yeah, we're gonna balance. Sorry, we're not gonna like do a ton as staff to balance numbers. We'll do what we can, but it's more of a balancing of a result, not a balancing of not a proactive balancing. Um, because we also have to determine like, well, is the issue at hand an actual numbers issue, or are there other things going on? Um,
Right.
so yeah.
Will there be any good social activities for warriors to do outside of battles with other cultures and forces of evil? For example, the Arcanists have social influence via spells, and artisans can make money through their services. So yes, we will have both through culture leads, NPCs, the arbiters, etc. There are going to be quests and other things in the game where you can, through combat, or the warriors are questing, or whatever it is you want to do, you can go and get money. We're going to, I think, cover a little bit more of that in terms of our rules coming up as far as how we want the economy to run. But in general, yes, the staff are going to give you guys things to do that will result in you getting coin, because that's fun.
Also, yeah, I just want to echo this comment I just saw come up. So the this may be a question from a new LARPer, but what your class can do shouldn't define everything. It's not like, oh, I can't cast this friend spell, so I can't role play. That's LARPing, right? Not to like make light of the question, but just I think the person who asked this is probably like right there on the edge of like all those are the things you can do. You just have to do them within the confines of what the warrior class can do. Warriors are really good at certain things, and then they do not have boons or bonuses to do other things. Artisans are really good at certain things, and then they do not have boons or bonuses to do other things. So, if you want to have a well rounded experience, finding solutions and role playing a character and all that kind of thing is solely up to you, but you do it by focusing on your strengths and saying how can I leverage my strengths as a warrior to do the things I want to do. And if you don't really find like combative solutions to your problems, or finding solutions to problems that exist outside of combat, then maybe a warrior class isn't for you. But I think it does a disservice to say, well, I don't have these class features, so I'm not going to do them. I think people still have a lot of fun playing warrior, especially when you see how you fit into the economy, making up for other people's shortcomings and getting coin that way. I think it'll play out pretty nicely. Yeah, the comments like role playing doesn't need mechanics, um, that sort of thing. I think those are good comments.
Are the Rivlin Earls and Viscounts still alive? Do the Rivlins have any in-world leadership? Yes, they are still alive, and in fact, and I don't think we're retconning this, they are still in control of the Rivlin cities. the cities that the Hadrians took over or besieged or whatever, as soon as they were done, they put the Rivlin leadership back in charge. They're basically like Vichy France, you know. That's how it is still. Whether or not the Rivlin people like that, that's up to you guys. But that is the status of the world. There are leaders who are Rivlin, but they work for the Hadrians because that was the end of the war 10 years ago.
And also, just a note on this sort of thing in general. In the new rules, there will be a note on this. I think there may have been some blurred lines in Reckoning's past where NPCs playing in-world leadership had a dubious relationship with actual in-game power. We're going to make it very clear that no one can force you to do anything you don't want to do. The only time where that is the case is when an NPC or a staff member is talking to you about safety, rules, behavior, that sort of thing. But in-game commands, that's up to the culture itself to decide who they want to put the power in. So there could be a character that everyone agrees is the king of whatever, whatever, and if they elect him that or whatnot, and they want to follow along with that player's um, commands, then that's a role play thing. As far as Rivlin, like leadership, in-world leadership, I will be reprising Owen, but not as no longer a bailiff, no longer a kind of local power there. You'll find out in game how that story has kind of unfolded in my absence last year. But yeah.
All right, so there are a lot of feelings about lore and how different factions should be represented in it. As more official lore is made available, how do you plan to balance perception of the various cultures versus the facts of the setting? For example, the perception that Suzak took over parts of the march when they moved in by force versus the reality that they helped address a famine and ended up in charge. So we will be essentially covering in canon. We're still working on it. We really appreciate you guys giving us a bunch of lore to work with on that you guys have created yourselves. But yes, we are still working on canonizing certain aspects of the world. Some of it we are going to lift the veil, so to speak. You know, you're going to have a clear-cut answer on how something happened or why, and then it's up to you guys to determine how you want to respond to that. There are going to be some things that we are going to deliberately obfuscate or leave opaque, I guess, in the world because we don't want you to have all the answers, because that's just not how it is in the real world. So I don't think, everyone would have the right answer in the world of Reckoning. Specifically, things like, the big one that everyone asks about is who started the war? When the Hadrians got to the march, who started it? Who picked that fight first? We might answer that question more than likely. We're going to cover like a couple of more facts about it, but how the players respond to that is going to be up to you guys, because it might not be like as clear cut an answer as, oh, the Hadrians just came in and started slinging trebuchets over the wall, just rocks
Right.
everywhere.
We're gonna do our best to, when we present lore, present facts, present things that actually happened, and you can feel about them whatever way you want. When we go back before we post the final lore stuff online, we're gonna do our best to edit and make sure that we leave out anything that is up for debate, and say these are the facts. This is what has happened up to this point, and this is stuff that we've already met with all the factions. We've confirmed that this stuff is canon. One thing you cannot do is like. Attempt to canonize like super disparaging storylines that haven't existed. So like, the stuff that's on the lore is there. Any personal storylines that you want to come up with, that's totally fine. But coming up with like really heinous rumors about another faction and claim that they're canon, that's not how this works.
Right.
Yeah.
And to that end, we're not going to try to paint everyone as the good guys, because obviously that does us a disservice in terms of how we want the game to work. We want to make it really obvious that there aren't really bad guys, there aren't really good guys. Everyone's got their reasons for doing what they did, and maybe what they did had a negative impact on someone else, and they're going to not like that. that's just how we're gonna have to roll with it, and that's part of the game.
Last one. At Rec 2, the player base essentially decided that large, complicated rituals were a thing. How does staff plan to address player created mechanics in the future? So that's kind of a two-parter question. First, you did decide that rituals were a thing, but saying that there are mechanics surrounding that isn't true. There were no real rules around that. Now, enough players decided rituals were a big enough deal that we decided to take that and to make actual mechanics around it. Not everything that players come up with we'll decide we want to make mechanics around, because it's just more for us to police. And at the end of the day, we do want to kind of create a sandbox with lots of stuff for you to bite into. But if every little system has rules around it, then that's a lot for us to adjudicate and a lot for you guys to have to remember. So there are rituals, then that will be released in the upcoming rules. Um, and yeah, um, there you go.
Yeah. All right, that was the end of the questions that we got from you guys already. So we can take other questions, and if anyone wants to raise their hand, we'll also take questions in the chat. While we're waiting for a question or two. One thing that I will put out that I didn't do an announcement for, but the updated general costuming guidelines are on the website. So if you go to the Reckoning LARP page, I think /costuming, you can look at our costuming guideline. There are two things that I'm sure people will want to know on there. The big stuff is you are allowed to have personal heraldry. Obviously, that went out with the style guides. You are allowed to wear colors of a different color, of a different culture, as long as they're small. Like, you know, you can paint a red rose on a green shield for a Rivlin. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But as long as your dominant color on your kit continues to be your culture's primary color. And then the other big thing is you're permitted to wield or wear 1 to 2 items that are outside of your normal culture restrictions, as long as it is approved by staff. And any borrowed items you use have to be the correct color. And I'm just going to say it now, and we put it on the website. If it's something really distinctive like armor or shield shapes, probably not going to be approved. But a weapon or small accessories, maybe. We have one request to speak, so I'm going to put you up on the while we're waiting for Mother to join us on the stage. I don't see them joining. I will answer. So we've got one. Will enemies like orcs and undead have their stats and abilities told ahead of time, or is it a find out of the game kind of thing? You will know what the orcs and undead can do to you before you get to the game. There will be things that the orcs and the undead can do to themselves, like their own rules, their own, like how they run their hit point stuff, how they run their armor, etc., etc. Some of that stuff is going to be find out in game. But the big things, like if they have a spell that affects players, you're going to know about it ahead of time, and how much damage they do, you're going to know about ahead of time. Because you have to. We cannot rely on word of mouth for that stuff. It's no different than everyone understands, you know, a one-handed sword does 1, a two-handed sword does 2, and an arrow does 3 damage. You guys are going to know what the orcs do. And I'll pretty much just tell you orcs deal double damage. So 2, 4, 6. That's the rule. We've got... with the advent of plastic armor, because yes, we are allowing some plastic armor, would plastic helmets potentially be allowed? Yes, it depends on the helmet. As long as it looks like metal, it will probably be allowed. But again, you'd have to show us, because maybe not. I can't look into the look into the future and figure that out. Are all Rivlin Earls vassals of Hadria or only Westmarch? That is a good question. We'll get back to you guys on that one because we're still working out who owns what in the world. That is one of the things that we are going to figure out and tell you guys about.
This may still be TBD, but do you have any idea if the event will run 3 days, 4, or 5? It is not TBD, but we're going to wait to release that until we have every dotted I and crossed T.
Yep.
Orange. Yep, no orange. It's reserved. And looting rules, Theseus, will be forthcoming.
Yeah, maybe don't wear orange pants. If it's too orange, let's not. And arbiters are not lootable. Why are helmets limited to metal? Why no leather helmet? This one is because we're being stuffy and uptight, and we think that metal helmets look better, so we're going to reward you guys for using them. Yep. If your leather helmet looks metal.
No, don't indulge him with that. Oh, he's serious. Hey, you know what?
If you have it, submit
send
it.
Send an email, and we'll look at it. Yeah, any questions you have about approvals, please send them. Approvals go to the email.
Should we talk about proposed territorial holdings before finalizing them? So we're working on that stuff with the culture leads. They're our go-tos. They're our system matter experts for this stuff. They have the kind of a finger on the pulse of what their cultures want and expect. We are working on a new mechanic for the game that is going to involve who owns what. So this is kind of a big thing that we are working and focusing on right now, and we want to cover all of our bases as far as making sure that everyone has a foothold into this aspect of the game. And then also we want to, for example, reward the Suzak Mar, who have won the game, technically, 2 years in a row. So they're going to have a little bit of a boon to start off with, because that's what they're going to get.
And without it's not really giving too much away, but territorial holdings will matter. There will be a map game that will be released that's going to be pretty in depth and will allow different players who want to do different kinds of things dig in, but basically it also allows players to do a larger political scope sort of game, so you guys can really see what's going on outside of the nitty gritty of this once yearly event.
Yes, money react from Fresh Prince Suleiman. Indeed, you guys did get all the money, and so there will be some in-game rewards for that. Well, let's keep those questions. Do we know if it will be all shades of orange, or is it more ochre shade?
Send an email in for approval. For every question that comes through about uniforms and costumes and kit and equipment, that's going to be our answer. Send it in. Yes, there will be a more, I don't know about more detailed, but there will be a map released. I don't know when, but it will come out with the map game, because it has to be in order for the game to work. No, we're not killing anyone. Just, send it in.
Outside of questions, was there anything else we wanted to put out?
Everything else, I think it's getting there. It's pretty close to being ready to.
Can artisans dual wield weapons? Yes. Let me make sure that the website has the right rule. Yep, artisans can dual wield, arcanists cannot. What? All right, well, if we're not going to get any other questions, we don't need to drag this out unnecessarily. More potions coming. Yes, lots more potions with actual rules. We will see them hopefully soon. Is brass considered too yellow to be armor for non-Suzak Mar? I don't consider brass being like a distinction for the Suzak Mar. Like brass armor exists all over the place. Just because it kind of looks yellow, I think it would pass for pretty much anybody else as long as the rest of your kit is sufficiently correctly colored.
Yeah, because otherwise they're just like general lookbook questions. And obviously we can't answer it based on not seeing what you're talking about.
Yep. Will there be assassination mechanics?
Is this a find out in game thing?
I mean, realistically, no, because that kind of mechanic would not be the kind of thing I'd want players to find out in game, because it would be difficult to communicate to someone that you just got assassinated. There is going to be a poison potion. We're still working out how it works exactly. It isn't. I don't necessarily know that it's going to work the way I think you envision assassination mechanics. I understand that there's like knockout mechanics at other LARPs, but currently we're not looking at adding those to the game. What creatures are canon to the March?
Question. So far that have been in game, obviously humans, orcs, as of last year, undead, trolls.
Yeah, there were giant spiders that were plaguing certain portions of the March. Elves once existed in the March, and then the orcs exterminated them. So they're not really around anymore. I think there are other large beasts and similar things that are known, and then there are rumors of other magical beasts of notoriety that may or may not exist.
Cursed energy.
Right.
Cats, dogs, and frogs. I don't see why not. It's obviously out of our scope to list every single canon animal, but you can be pretty much assured that if it like exists IRL, it probably exists in the March. In terms of like what would make sense for a foresty climate. Probably not going to have like, I don't know, giraffes that exist more in like a Sahara, and we're not in the Sahara.
My understanding is that Hadria has giraffes.
Okay, but we're in the March.
Yep. But yes. Yeah, but the Hadrians also have war elephants, but there's no way that those are going to get up the lift, so you guys can't have them. And also,
just because they exist doesn't mean they are optimal for war beasts, Theseus.
Yeah, and the Hadrian giraffe cavalry keep jumping off of the lift to their doom, so they can't figure out how to get them in the March. Maybe one of these years.
Giravalry.
That's a good point to end this. Let's just finish it.
Are there any other animals that specifically don't exist? I think I'll be honest. You guys are welcome to canonize or not canonize animals to your whim. I don't think.
If this is leading up to, can you bring animals to the event? That is a no. I want to On a free, we'll do, yeah. Do not, you cannot bring animals to the event.
Yes, no animals. All right. And with that, I think I am all set on questions. So unless anybody else has got any last ones in right before the bell, then we're gonna go ahead and call it.
Hey, I want to make one clarifying point real quick. You said that personal heraldry was allowed. That is allowed for the 3 cultures that are not Hadrian.
Yeah.
And that is simply because the Hadrians are military.
Yes, the transition to culture doesn't fully encapsulate the Hadrian presence in the march. They are, by and large, a military force. But, all right. Good chat, everybody. We'll probably be answering some more questions and just hanging out in the Discord after this. And I hope everyone enjoyed sitting around and listening to us talk.